Urban Interests. Listen, I'm so excited because there is something that's happening that we have been pushing for a long time. A federal holiday of Juneteenth. We've been celebrating and everyone is up in arms and so are we. So we have a special guest with us, Mr. Michael Emoteep. He is the founder of the African History Network and he is also a talk show host, a researcher, a lecturer, and a writer. He has hosted national radio shows such as the Warren Ballantine Show, and yes, come on now, the Roland Martin Show, talking about big time. He is an avid writer, and his articles can be read at the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and his articles can be are published by, yourblackworld.net, culturecritic.com, financialjuneteenth.com, and blackthen.com. So come on here, Mr. Michael, because I'm excited about this. Let's talk.
Okay. All right. How you doing today, Angela?
I am doing absolutely wonderful. You know, President Biden signed that legislation making
Right.
federal holiday. And so House Majority Whip Jim Claiborne says that that was important. So explain to us the Juneteenth flag.
You said the Juneteenth flag?
Yes, there's a flag, isn't there?
Right. Well, the Juneteenth flag is a variation of the U.S. flag. So it's to recognize that, in 1776, 4th of July 4th, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed by the first 4 of 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, the majority of African Americans were still enslaved. So this is designed for us to have something of our own, and it's red, black, and green as well, which are the colors of the Pan-African flag, which was created by Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. It was adopted in August of 1920 at their international convention. More importantly than the flag is to understand Juneteenth and the history behind Juneteenth. And we have to correct the history, but also protect the history of Juneteenth, because it's going to be commodified, and we have to get out in front of that and shut this down. Walmart and these other stores should not be selling Juneteenth merchandise, because African Americans have been celebrating Juneteenth since 1866 in various ways, and African Americans have been selling that merchandise. Okay, so June 19th, 1865 commemorates when Major General Gordon Granger delivers what's known as General Order Number 3 to enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas. All right. He arrived the day before. He arrives with about 2,000 troops. Majority of them are African-American troops. And they are enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation from January 1st, 1863. The war is, for all practical purposes, over now. It ends basically April 1865, when General Robert E. Lee surrenders to General Ulysses S. Grant. But Texas is more removed from the war. Major battles don't take place in Texas. You have slave owners who flee other Confederate states and go into Texas and take their slaves with them. So Texas is more removed, and they had not gotten the news that the war was over and the slaves were free. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation did not free the enslaved Africans, January 1st, 1863. This is why we have to correct the history, because there's a lot of misinformation floating around in media, especially white-owned media, dealing with this. If you go to loc.gov, which is the Library of Congress website, or archives.gov, which is the National Archives, and you actually read the Emancipation Proclamation. It was a military strategy from Lincoln, President Lincoln, and it states that the slaves in territories or states in rebellion are free as of January 1st, 1863. But slaves that are still in the border states, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, Delaware, they're still slaves. Slaves who were in territories that had succeeded from the Union but came back under Union control, they're still slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free the enslaved Africans. Okay, it's going to be the 13th Amendment, ratified December 6, 1865, with Georgia ratifying it. That's what's going to legally free the slaves. All right, so we can commemorate June 19th when the majority of those Africans in Galveston got the message, and they're going through different parts of Texas delivering this message. Okay, there's 250,000 enslaved Africans in Texas at the time. They're going through different parts of Texas. They're going to continue to deliver the message the next day to different parts of Texas. So June 19th was a date that was settled on to commemorate this. Okay, but we have to get the history straight with this.
All right. Now, I'm glad that you are a historian, because I've heard some different variations of it as well. And so,
what were the different variations that you heard?
Well, that basically not that there were slaves who were still enslaved, that everyone became free. And so when
everyone became free when?
In 1865. So
when they as the Union troops are going through different areas of the Confederacy, taking back control of those lands, they're enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation. But this is a proclamation. They have to change the 13th. They have to change the Constitution. They have to amend the Constitution for slaves to legally be freed, because the Constitution sanctions slavery. Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution laid the foundation for the Fugitive Slave Acts of 1793 and 1850. Okay, so they have to amend the Constitution with the 13th Amendment, and then the 14th Amendment gives citizenship rights to African Americans. Then the 15th Amendment of 1870 guarantees the right to vote to African American men. Doesn't apply to women at this time, but African American men. So you're going through a process. You're going through a process of these territories being brought back into the Union, brought back under Union control. And these various states have to then vote, or their state legislatures have to then vote to ratify the 13th Amendment as well. That's part of the ratification process, or the process to amend the U.S. Constitution. Okay, to amend the U.S. Constitution, a bill has to pass both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate by 2/3 majority vote. Then it has to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures by a 2/3 majority vote. All right, so this part is part of that ratification process as well for the 13th Amendment. So we can commemorate June 19th, 1865, but we have to understand the real history. And then Juneteenth connects us to voting rights. It connects us to the voter suppression tactics that take place after the 15th Amendment is ratified. It connects us to, in Texas, the Texas State Constitution of 1866, which has a purity of the ballot box clause in it, which leads to what are known as all-white primaries, like the all-white primaries of 1918. It connects us to the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890, where they voted to institute poll taxes and literacy tests. So it connects us to voting rights. It connects us to reparations, repairing the damage of slavery and the legacy of slavery, because when the emancipation takes place, when Africans are free, we're free largely without reparations, without giving land, giving tools, giving money, anything like that. And 40 acres and a mule, Special Field Order number 15, that land is largely going to be taken back by President Andrew Johnson, who succeeds Lincoln after Lincoln's assassinated in April of 1865, and he's going to give all that land back to the Confederacy for the most part. Okay, so all of this is, so people want to talk about reparations. Juneteenth is directly related to reparations. You're talking about the legacy of slavery. You're talking about what happened during Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. So these two are they interconnect.
So, Mr. Michael, you have given us a thorough history lesson about, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10, but it's information that we definitely should know.
Absolutely.
About the bill that passed unanimously in the Senate, however, there were 14 Republican lawmakers.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me. You're dealing with the white nationalist party. You're dealing with the party that many of them support the insurrectionists. You had 147 Republican traitors who voted not to certify the 2020 presidential election, okay, on January 6th. You had 147 who voted. Now, it's important for people to watch what's taking place. Go to govtrack.us, govtrack.us. You can track these bills in Congress and you can see who supports them. Go to congress.gov and read these bills, okay, congress.gov, and read the bills. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House of Representatives March 3rd, 2021 by a vote of 220 to 212. 212 Republicans voted no on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act after they sat there and cried and talked about how wrong it was what happened to George Floyd. No Republicans voted for the bill. The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. No Republicans in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate voted for the bill. H.R. 40 is in the House of Representatives right now. It passed out of the House Judiciary Committee 2 or 3 months ago for the first time in 32 years, originally introduced by the Honorable John Conyers from the 13th Congressional District. Now is sponsored by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, who also is the one who sponsored the Juneteenth bill from Texas, because this deals with Texas. Reparations and Juneteenth are interconnected. Anybody that lies to you and tells you they're not, they don't know what they're talking about. This is about 188 members of the House of Representatives that have signed on to support H.R. 40. None of them are Republicans. None of them are Republicans. So we can see the ideology of the party. So of the Republican Party, the GOP. So I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. I can see who consistently supports bills that benefit African Americans, and I can see who consistently vote against those bills and are obstructionists to those bills. So yeah, I'm not surprised it was 14. I'm surprised it wasn't more than 14, tell you the truth.
So Michael, what you have said is definitely true with regard. I say we need to stay woke. I think we're sleeping a little bit. I think we've gotten a little bit comfortable with what's happening and what's going on, because we know that there's over 90 voter suppression bills and or has been passed that's trying to make it harder for us to vote in the upcoming election.
Close to 400. It's close to 448 state legislatures that are being pushed by Republicans. It's close to 400 bills. It's about last count, about 381 bills in 48 state legislatures. See, we don't understand the white backlash that always comes after periods of perceived gains by African Americans. The end of Reconstruction, 1877, with Rutherford B. Hayes becoming the Republican candidate for president, becoming president, and the Republicans agreed with they agreed to compromise with the Democrats and remove the Union troops out of the South that were largely enforcing the rights of African Americans. And this is what ends Reconstruction. You see a backlash to the civil rights movement with the election of Richard Nixon, okay, and who ran on the platform of law and order. You see a backlash to 2 terms of President Barack Obama with the election of Donald Trump, who ran on the platform of law and order. You see a backlash with the attack on critical race theory and the attack on the 1619 Project, which was a backlash to the summer of 2020 and the Black Lives Matter protests and the protests over George Floyd. All this is always a backlash, okay? And we see this, and then they attack you, usually not in the streets. They attack you in the courts and they attack you in the legislatures because they're dealing with law. Many of us don't understand law. We don't understand how to perceive these attacks coming, because I knew it was coming, and we don't understand how to defend against these attacks. We have to understand political self-defense.
All right, I will agree with you on that. We can go into this a little bit further. However, we're kind of wrapping up with you, so I want to bring it back to the celebration of this particular moment. So yes. How should we celebrate, African American families celebrate this monumental time? And are there any events in the area that you can share with our audience?
Well, there are events taking place all over Detroit. I'm actually in Atlanta right now because I'm here for the 3-day Juneteenth Festival in Atlanta, and I'll be speaking there Saturday and Sunday at the Centennial Olympic Park. But you can probably Google Juneteenth Detroit. There are celebrations taking place. This is a time for us to study the history, not just commemorate those enslaved Africans getting the message. And it's also very important to understand some slave owners in Texas kept the message away from slaves and kept them enslaved for an additional year. One of them was a white woman named Martha Gibbs, because the involvement of white women in slavery is much greater than we thought. Professor Stephanie E. Jones Rogers, in her book in 2019, I think it was, or 2018, called They Were Her Property, details this, how from 1850 and 1860, about 40% of slave owners were white women, okay? So we need to come together as family, commemorate what happened in 1865, study the history, correct the history, use that as a foundation to give us our values, our interests, and our principles. Use that to empower ourselves economically and politically. So this is a very, very important time. and continue to push for reparations. We have to leverage this to push to repair the damage, to push to get these other bills passed through Congress as well.
All right. We're going to drop the mic right there because I think.
All right. And visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also.
Okay. Say it again because I don't want to overtalk you.
Oh, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com.
All right. Thank you so much for being
Thanks,
with
Angela.
us. Appreciate you. And hey, success on that speech on tomorrow.